Welcome back to Winning in the Workplace, the Maurice Velasquez Show, where we talk about all things leadership, management excellence, and building thriving team cultures. I welcome everybody. We appreciate you very much for joining us. It's really good to see you guys. This is Maurice. Now, some of you are thinking now we've been at home now, basically in home stay for about 2 weeks. And a lot of us have already set things up. This webinar is about setting up and managing. I'm only interested about the managing part, so hang on in there, because what I want to show you is that the two go together really well. The title is How to Set Up Remote Teams and how to manage this so they can be high performance. Okay, so I'm going to cover two scenarios that happen in real life. Through it all, you correctly, it's like a domino effect. Once you set things up in a domino line and then you press the domino, the first domino, they all it's kind of fun to watch. Okay, well, it's the same thing. If you set it up correctly and you do the initial grunt work of just making sure things are set up, then it's a whole lot easier to provide the support that you want to provide your remote teams, and then build a culture around it. And so that's what we're going to break it up into: is how to do the setup, how to support the setup, how to support the teams, and then how to build a culture around it so that it's not only fun, but very engaging, very rewarding. All right, so we're going to dissect each one of these a little later towards the end of the talk, and then, of course, I'll be addressing questions as we go. All right, so the first scenario I want to share with you is a real-life scenario that I was hired, I was promoted back in my early days when I was a young pup right out of school. And what happened was I was working in a technical support department, and there was an opening in marketing and development, and so the company decided to promote a lot of the technical support technicians and a lot of the customer service reps into those roles, because we knew the software, we knew our product, we knew the services. So we were very good, our technical support and our customer service department were very good at helping customers. And so they only promoted those that were high performing. So there was about 7 to 10 of us. A couple of us got sent to Europe. Some of us got sent to another department. Others were able to open up remote offices. So it was a real great opportunity. We were a national software company. It was a leading software utility company at that time in the early 90s. And so I was selected. I was given the opportunity to apply for the position, and I was selected to move into product development. All right. And so the scenario was this: that the company had 5 programming teams throughout the country. As a matter of fact, you don't see one of the dots there. Let me move my screen. Okay. We had 5 teams remotely and 1 locally. So my responsibility was to interact, support, work with each one of these software houses in these different locations. But not everybody in those locations worked in their office. Most of their teams worked remotely at home. So I had people at hubs and I had people remotely from there. Okay, so they were scattered all within the cities. And the reason I showed you the time map of the time zones is because you want to keep aware of that when you're setting up calls or you're calling people and you forget where they're all sitting, which is why I checklist step number 1 is important: is who is remote, who's not remote, who's at the office, what time zone they are. We'll get that in a minute. All right, but I had the scenario of managing these folks, but I was being promoted into a position that was already being managed by somebody else. It's just that they were going to move on to something else, they were growing in the company. So they promoted us to fill in the spot. So it was really cool. So let me go over the list and I'll show you how it worked out. All right. So here's the list that I've provided you guys. Okay. And there's the 10 items: the who, the tools, the setup, the goals, the non-remote tasks, the progress reports, the frequent regular communications, the leadership rhythm, the team-wide calls, how to provide training, and how to build fun around it. Okay, so this seems like a very innocuous list, and you kind of go, well, yeah, all that's, man, you can get that in a book at Books A Million. You know, I mean, what's the difference? But it's how you approach it and how you work these things together. So when they were sitting down with us, as they were promoting us, they hadn't yet announced us. Okay, it was all through the recruiting process. They showed us how it was that they were managing, and they pretty much showed a similar list like this. Okay, I didn't have this list back then. I've built it ever since, and they basically went through it and said, all right, Maurice, look, here's where everyone's seated. Here's who's at the offices. Here's their contact information. Here's who's working remotely in those cities. And so they gave me a spreadsheet, a list of everybody, and I pretty much knew who was who. Okay, and I had all their phone numbers, information. That helped. That helped a whole lot. All right. Then they assured me, all right, Maurice, look, all the teams are set up. They all have their tools. They're all set up. They all have their equipment. They've been working they've all been working very well. We're hiring some new programmers, but as they come on board, each hub leader, each team leader knows how to onboard them, knows how to get them their tools, how to get them all set up. Is wonderful. Okay. They gave me the names of all the folks, of all the team leaders, of all the regional directors. And so I interacted with them to make sure that everyone had their tools and their setup, so that when they came into work, there was no surprise as to where they sat, whether they were remote, if they had webcams at home, whether they had scanners at home, whether they had the equipment, do they have the right chairs. We even offered them and helped them go into their homes and help them fill out their workspace. Did they need desks? As a matter of fact, one of the offices, we actually created a nice little corner area in their living room, and the company just showed an incredible amount of support. Why? Because we knew that if it's important for you to have a good workspace at the office, then you have to make sure that you have a good workspace at home, because the homes were probably not built to have them working at home. So we kind of had to invest in that, and that we just didn't spare any expenses. Why? Because if they're going to work from home, we needed to make sure they had everything they needed. So the tools and the setup, they were set up. All right. So then they sat us down and they showed us, all right, Maurice, everyone has their goals. You're not building teams. They're already working, they're already producing. So don't move into micromanaging. They're all basically doing really well. All right. But they all work from very, very specific goals. They have their regular meetings. You need to chime in and participate on those, but they know how to run themselves. Okay. Don't go in there and try to rechange the furniture and prove yourself by supporting. So I said, okay, well, great. So for each software team, they showed me their game plans. They showed me their project plans. They showed me the week by week progress of when they needed to turn in different modules. They showed me the end goals of when the softwares were going to be released. So it was very organized. Okay, that they pretty much all had a copy of it, and they all had their own tasks and their own assignments. And it was really nicely set up. Okay, very simple. They used Microsoft Project at that time. Some of them used Microsoft Spreadsheet, but everyone knew what their goals were on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and actually the whole timeline of their projects. So check mark, that was done. All right, then what was interesting, as I started talking to, when I finally got hired and announced, when I started talking to the teams, they started identifying for me the things that they needed us to do at the home office. So although this was not as focused, I still considered it a check mark, because they knew to ask, look, here's the stuff we can't do at home and we can't do remotely. We need the home office to do. So we make sure that was done. All right, then the progress reports. Because they had their goals and they knew what to do, they knew where to go into the software, whether it was the shared files. Back then we didn't have shared files, so we emailed a lot of attachments to each other. I certainly do not encourage you to do email attachments on this whatsoever, because you will chase more files than it's worth, and you'll spend a lot of time. You'll waste a lot of time chasing files, as opposed to having things on a shared folder and everyone knows where to go in and update their reports. All right, so this team, all these teams, they had their spreadsheets and they all knew to update them, and they had to turn them in by a certain time, because the basic rule was, Maurice, if you want to be efficient and effective on this, you can't be chasing people around asking them, where are we, why didn't you? Okay, we already have them accustomed that you meet with them on a regular basis. Open up the spreadsheets. They know how to upload the information at a certain time. And then when you dive in with them, you guys open up the document and start saying, all right, good. Congratulate them on where things are going well. What's the delay on these areas? What can I do to help you? Is there anything we can do at the home office? How does it look like for our weekly, monthly goals? What's our projection? But you don't start off by chasing people as to where they are, because everyone's responsible and everybody's already used to knowing where things are at, where they can go and fill out that information. All right, well then that's a check mark on number 5. Then let's go to number 6. All right, number 6 is regular communication. They didn't leave it, quote, up to me to figure out when to chase them. They had already set with the Seattle team at a certain time, with the Chicago team at a certain time, the Atlanta team at a certain time. And they said, Maurice, here's the schedule of when they have their meetings with each other. Here's the schedule of when they have meetings with you. Okay, and then here's the meeting what you're going to have with us. So I'll cover that under number 7 in a minute. But they gave me the schedule of the routine that they were already accustomed. So I said, man, this is fantastic. I don't have to prod them to put it on the schedule. It's already there. I'm just stepping into a routine. And I'm like, this is great. So sure enough, when I got hired for about a month and a half, I shadowed my supervisor and he showed me how to do it. And he showed me how to have those meetings. And it was really good that he did a handoff rather than, hey, here you go, Maurice, because I'd never been in those meetings. So I had to watch their style, their personalities, and really get to know them on how they had those meetings so they were effective. Some meetings were short, 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some meetings were long, an hour, hour and a half, depending on the project. So we always allotted a good hour to an hour and a half, but we didn't always use that time if it was not necessary. But the key thing is that there was a regular time in which that connection happened, that alignment happened. And then above that, it was up to me to make sure that between those regular rhythm meetings, I would stay in touch with them on a random basis so that they didn't feel disconnected and I didn't feel disconnected. So that I didn't just depend on that one-time meeting, because that's not real life. Things happen at the speed of business, so you have to talk randomly and frequently. But there has to be a good percentage, a good 30-40% of the time that it's regular, consistent rhythm meetings, and about 60-70% where it's random, pick up the phone, ad hoc. So check mark. That was already set up. All I had to do was walk into that. All right, then this part, although everything's important here, every domino is important, this one, number 7, is extremely critical. And it was this. All right, Maurice, we meet as a leadership team on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock and on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. And then we have an all-team meeting on Fridays. So on the Tuesday 9 o'clock meeting and the Thursday 9 o'clock meeting, the directors of programming come in, customer service comes in, technical support comes in, marketing comes in, the owners come in, the IT team comes in, and we have an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting in which we look at everything, the whole of the business. And in that meeting is where we're going to talk about the progress of where all the projects are. We're going to identify the key rocks, the key milestones. Then we're going to make sure that we know why things aren't happening and what do we need to do to support, what do we need to train. Then we're going to give each one of you feedback on what you need to bring back to them so that you're the connector. All right. And so you need to come into those meetings. I knew what the next statement was going to be is you need to come into those meetings ready. And so I pretty much said, all right, I put on my schedule on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock and on Thursdays at 9 o'clock. That's when the leadership team meeting happens where we are going to support everyone else. So I have to have my rhythm meetings with my support teams before that, everyone knowing that there's going to be a conversation, which boom, number 7, check, it worked. It works, guys. I learned that in the early 90s, and I've used that same rhythm in all my professional development, all my careers, positions, and then in coaching and consulting clients. You keep a rhythm meeting and you make sure that you have a rhythm meeting with the remote teams, and then you have a rhythm meeting with the leadership team to bring things up to them, and then they bring things down. And you're the glue that creates that alignment of communication. All right, then number 8. Number 8's kind of fascinating. It's kind of cool. I've never seen this before, but it was pretty good to see it. On Fridays, the executives were accustomed to doing this all teams meeting in which they we used to jokingly say they pontificated positiveness. Okay. So they were very positive and they loved to get on the high horse and just scream encouragement, support. It was vastly and mostly very positive. If it got to be negative and corrective, we dealt with each individual team in those individual meetings. But the point of the all team calls was to get the executives involved so that they were seen by the remote teams. Okay, they saw me all the time. They heard me all the time. I've oftentimes brought my VP. So we were in the grunt work in and out every day, every week. So they'd seen us, but what we needed was to have the executives have a place where they shined and they showed the direction, the vision, and they could hear back from everybody else. And it was a fantastic, fascinating connection because everyone felt more connected being remote than a lot of times the people in home office. Okay. And that was often the complaint, that we cared more about the remote teams than we did the home office. And if you can make that the problem, you're doing it right. Okay. Because by default, every time you set up remote teams, the more you build remote teams, the more everyone's going to feel disconnected. So you have to make sure that that you create the opposite problem. Okay. And if you get to hear people complain that, man, I want to be a remote team member, well, that's good. Okay. But that only happens because of the incredible amount of engagement that happens on a regular basis on items number 6, number 7, and number 8. The regular communication, the leadership rhythm, and the team calls is all about supporting them and making sure that there's this focus and no one disappears. Okay. And you, the supervisor in the middle, are the glue that makes all this happen. So boom, check mark, number 8. Okay. Then as I'm meeting with them, man, the amount of stuff that would come out about programmers needing training, programmers needing assistance, support, phone skills. They needed, we needed to send them to some program because back then it was a Visual Basic that was coming out, and so we needed to find new training, online training, bring trainers in house. Also, training to go into those hubs and train them, or also find national trainers that were willing to do remote training on phone calls and videos. And remember, the technology back then is not what it was now, but we set it up and it happened, and we had a training coordinator. For a large operation like that, we had one full-time training coordinator and an assistant. So it was amazing that 2 individuals, full-time individuals, a training coordinator and an HR assistant, could sustain a team of about 400 to 500 people. Okay. So check mark, provide training. And then 10, build an incredible amount of fun. First of all, those programming teams, they held a huge carrot. Every milestone, every month, every quarter, every project finish that they came in on time with a certain amount of bug percentages. In other words, you can't have more than X number of bugs, or you can't have showstoppers. There was some ways in which we would rate them. And every time they knew how to hit their marks, man, an incredible amount of rewards happened. All right. Then we would also provide ongoing types of contests. We allowed them to come up with some of them. And in one company, we actually set up point system to where if they hit their weekly goals, they would get points additional to it, some kind of bonuses, financial bonuses, but they could get points. And if you racked up enough points, you could then go into the store of the office, which was on the internet, and you could actually purchase stuff, kind of like we had our own Amazon.com. It was really cool. Anyway, so you had a lot of fun, and we encouraged them to have their own fun and contests within each department, within each area. So my responsibility was to make sure that they were keeping the numbers. If they could keep the numbers, it was a whole lot easier for me to then go up to the powers that be and say, look, we're doing really well. I need more money. I need more investment on your part to help me let them create their own contests, their own excitement. And sure enough, I just fed the budget, and they fed me the numbers. So it was check mark. Okay, so it was not hard to be successful. Me as a manager came into that position. It was all set up. But now let's go to the second scenario. Okay. By the way, let me say that. Okay. It was all set up. My responsibility was to make sure that I was consistent on 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were already set up for me. Okay. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 was me diligently working the model and working the process from what they had set up and keeping the same routine. I brought in my own style, but I kept the same routine. I didn't let it fall apart. All right. So there's the items. Okay. So let me break it up to you in like this. Okay. The first 5 is what I would call the setup. That's where you do your setup. Okay. Then the next 3 items, 6, 7, and 8, is what I would refer to as where you provide support. Okay. And then the last 2 is where you provide the culture. Okay. So you're constantly always making sure none of these things fall apart. Just because it got set up correctly, it doesn't mean it's going to stay set up correctly. All right. So because the tools change, because the equipment breaks down, because you need backup equipment. You're always checking to make sure, does everyone have their tools, their equipment, the goals, the progress reports, and so you don't just set it up and forget about it. You're always visiting that. You're providing the support, and then you back it up with the culture behind it. Okay. All right. So then the second scenario I want to show you was a little different. It was a regional company, and we had 40 offices in the Lafayette area, in the Lafayette area, 40 offices in the New Orleans area. 10 offices in the Lafayette area, 10 offices in New Orleans, 10 offices in Baton Rouge, 10 offices in North Louisiana, 40 in Louisiana. Okay. Then we had a bunch more in the Chicago area, in the in the West Illinois, and the South Illinois. And then we built 10 more offices in North Alabama and South Alabama. So what I was assigned to was to come in and help support and do the same thing for the remote teams, and very similar scenario. Most of them were at offices, but there was a large handful of people that were working from their cars. They had multiple remote offices. Some of them were working from home. And then as we grew and we standardized and we stabilized everything and we showed profit and growth, then we opened up Alabama. And that's the beauty of this, that once the executives see that you're going to get yourself organized and that it works, then folks start realizing, wow, what's the possibility of this? Well, sure enough, we opened up Alabama, and within 2 years, within 16 months, 12 to 18 months, every single office was self-sustaining, profitable, so that in 2 years, because we opened up the Alabama offices really fast, back to back, we proved ourselves that it didn't matter if it was an existing office, existing teams, add teams, add teams to the network, or open new offices. We pretty much knew you followed this technique, you followed the 10 steps, you make sure all the district managers are following the 10 steps, you make sure the local team leaders are following the 10 steps, you make sure the state directors are following the 10 steps, and you make sure everyone is aligned using the same style of support, the same style of setup, and the same style of culture building. All right, so in that scenario, however, I was hired and I was brought on board and said, all right, Maurice, we have these offices. And so I asked basically the question, okay, do we have a list of who is where? There was no list, okay? So I had to spend a lot of time figuring out who was where, who was sitting where, phone numbers, contact information, who did what. It took a long time, but we got that done. All right, then I basically got with the directors, the regional directors, and said, all right, does everybody have their tools in their setup? They said, Maurice, half of us have no backup printers. Half of office, the scanners aren't working. Computer problems, we have them all over the place. And I was like, okay, great. So then we had to go and set all that up and make sure they all had it. For the folks that were working remotely and from their cars, same issue. Scanners weren't working at their houses. Printers weren't working. The webcamming was beginning to come out at that time, because this was in the early 2004, 2005. So we were starting to have video technology. Man, to set everybody up. Even today, you think it's easier, but it's not. I'll tell you that in just a second. All right, then did everybody have their goals? No, they kind of did, maybe did. What I heard from the executives all the time was they should have their goals, yeah, but they're not really well communicated. They haven't been really trained on them. Then the non-remote tasks, this became the problem because items 1, 2, and 3 weren't very well defined. So what happened? The remote teams wanted the home office to do a lot of their stuff. Why? Because I can't scan here. So I want to pass over that to the home office, to some other team. And the home office team is sitting there going, that's not our job. So number 4 became an issue because we weren't set up with the right equipment, and folks didn't know what their goals were tied to the equipment and the setup they had. So therefore, it became a debate as to who did what, and number 4 became a major obstacle. We had to clear that up and eventually check mark, but that took a long time. Okay, but we got that done real quickly. All right, then number 5, very few of them knew how to update the software, and that became probably the longest delay to get everybody accustomed. First of all, to get them convinced that, okay, so you really want me to enter everything into the software, okay? And if there's one issue that that keeps companies before the coronavirus, and I'm noticing it already here, is having everybody buy into the idea that, yes, you have to enter data either into your Salesforce or into your software where you keep the data, so that we all don't have to chase each other via email. Everybody updates the right software, which produces the reports where we can hold each other accountable and check progress. Other than that, if that doesn't happen, that's where everybody moves into micromanaging, okay? Because people aren't putting the data and they don't know where to put the data. So that was not a check mark. That was not fixed, okay? Then I asked the question, does everybody know how to use the software? The answer was no. So we had to train folks on the software, knowing how to use. Half of them didn't even know how to use Excel. A lot of them didn't know how to use Word forms at all, so we had to do a lot of training. Okay, then I got with the regional directors, the regional managers, and found out, okay, are you guys meeting with your offices on a regular basis? Now remember, the regional directors, regional managers, they weren't at an office. They had remote offices, so they had to do virtual 80-90% of the time, but there was no rhyme or reason of when they met, when they talked. So there's always constantly chasing each other, calling at the wrong time. Lori always calls us when we have 30 people in the office and there's high traffic, and she wants to talk to me about why such and such didn't happen. And I talk to Lori and I say, yeah, but every time I call her, she never answers the phone. So I talk to the branch manager, and the branch manager says, yeah, but every time I call her, all she wants to do is chew me out, and it's always the wrong time. Well, what all that backs up to is the fact that there's not a commitment, a regular commitment of when we're going to sit down and have those conversations, when we're not in the middle of the highest traffic peak periods in those offices. So number 6 wasn't being done, all right? Then, all right, back at the home office where I sat, okay, where we get in together as a team, the claims department, the adjusters, the underwriters, the IT team, and the engineers, did we get together on a regular basis and look at what's happening out in the field to support all of our money-making producers out there? And the answer was no. So I had to run around from department to department to get the leadership team on the same page regarding problems, regarding issues. So every time I heard issues from the field, I didn't have a commitment from my peers of when we'd sit down and listen to each other. So the claims didn't have a way to talk to me on a regular basis and me to underwriting, because there was no commitment to come together and act like a leadership team. So therefore, number 7, that was not being done. Team-wide calls took me forever to convince them, but we did, all right? We got to them. And the coolest thing about the team meetings is that, remember, we ended up having 90 offices. So what we decided to do is have daily huddles, and they were fantastic, okay? We would set up conference calls like this. They weren't video, they were all calls, and we would set up a 6-minute call starting at 8:30 with the first group of 20 offices, then at 8:40, another 6 minutes, and at 8:50, another, so that by 9 o'clock, we pretty much had the vast majority, if not all the offices. Eventually, when we got Alabama, that took till 9:10, 9:15. But nonetheless, between 8:30 and 9:15, daily huddles where we created a lot of engagement and a lot of positive feedback. And then on Friday, we turned it back around. We didn't do any of those daily huddles. We let them huddle on their own and collect information so that they knew when they were going to meet with Maurice and the regional managers on how to bring things up that needed fixing. So even though at the beginning, that was not the case, we had to build that, but it didn't have it when I started. And of course, we didn't have much fun build around it, but there was enough of it to where I was able to build around that. So when I got started with the second scenario of that job, notice this is what I started with. I started with 2 of the elements in place, and I had to go and build all the other 8. So when I assessed, it took me 1 month, a month and a half to go assess this, because first of all, we didn't have the pressure of Corona. Second of all, we didn't have the technology that we have now to where I could assess real fast. The first month, we had to assess this and start setting this up, and then we built it. Now, because we not only have the urgency of the Corona pressure, but the technology is there. You can assess this within a matter of days. Why? Because you have the list. And then you just have to know, all right, well, what are the components and elements of each one of these items, and know how to set them up. But hopefully by me giving you the 2 scenarios of real life, real world experience of how I faced one that was already set up for me and all I had to do was walk in and be successful. The second scenario, having learned from the first scenario, I realize this isn't set up. I'm not going to be successful. I have to hurry up and set it up correctly and make sure that the tools, the equipment, the communication, and all the commitments are made by the teams so that I could be successful. And sure enough, every team that I've done this with, it didn't matter whether we did this in a matter of weeks or a matter of months. Every time we put this into place, it's only a matter of time of letting this happen and support all the supervisors that are having to support everybody, and it doesn't matter who's sitting where, you will see growth. Short of a virus, short of a meteor hitting the earth, this works. It really works. Why? Because you're empowering the supervisors and you're empowering the team, and the executive team is not diving in, having to go and get into the weeds, and the managers aren't having to go and micromanage. You support the structure, and it works. So let's dissect into each one of these, okay? So the who, all right? So I have a couple of questions. I'm going to answer them here in just a few minutes, but thank you for the questions. All right. So the who, all right? In this one, what you want to do is you want to create a contact list. You want to know who does what. Put it on a spreadsheet and publish it internally so that everyone knows who does what. What's their phone number, what's their email, what's their cell phone number, and people aren't chasing around each other for that kind of information, okay? Very important, otherwise you'll waste a lot of people's time. All right, tools and setup, I'm not gonna repeat what we said earlier. Just make sure that you put it on the spreadsheet. You make sure everyone has the equipment, the tools, and now this is important, okay? Backup. I'll give you a very live scenario. In each hub, we needed to have somebody, and eventually it became the trunk of people's cars or in people's garage, where if printers broke down, okay, we made money by printing policies, okay? So we needed everybody at their offices and anybody at home or anybody in the car. We actually bought even printers for people to print from the back of their trunk whenever they were at a site. They would take their laptops, Bluetooth to the back of people's trunk, and they would print. It was fantastic. It was really, really cool. But anyway, when those printers broke down, the last thing I wanted you to do was sit there and go on Amazon.com and go find a printer and wait for a printer to come back and replace your. So we had to have backups strategically placed so that all you had to do was either drive within 1 day there and back to go pick up printers or meet halfway, and just to coordinate. That took about a week, but it's the commitment to make sure everyone has the tools and that everyone's nearby, and we assign runners. Okay, so right now in the coronavirus, there's still some leniency to be able to get out only for emergencies. An emergency is if remotely things are shut down and somebody can go deliver, make sure everyone does the social distancing and make sure everybody washes their hands and everything, but you can do that. If you can't, well, then you have to give everybody a certain budget to be able to order from Amazon and online services to make sure that delivery comes to back, okay? All right, and so the supplies, make sure that everyone has to look, even down to pencils and pens. Don't make them have to share pencils and pens with their kids at home, okay? That's just not the cool thing. The cool thing is when the kids are actually doing their homework, because now most of us have become homeschoolers through all this, when they're doing their homework and they're using your pens, okay? And they like, oh, great, cool, a nice little Team World pen, you know, or something like that. All right, so make sure everybody has the tools. All right, so the goals, make sure that they're clear. Okay, we'll cover that in just a few seconds, a few minutes as to what I mean by all this. Make sure that they're agreed upon. Okay, this is a major landmine that I've stepped into many times. I believe that I know what their goals, what their measurements, measurable performance metrics should be, their KPIs, and I talk with them. They're in agreement. They have it. Yeah, but my supervisor doesn't agree, and the owner of the company doesn't agree. And sure enough, I'm sitting there saying they're doing great, and my supervisor is saying no, they're not. So make sure that they're not only clear, but they're agreed upon, that they're smart, meaning they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic in time. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on it because I'll cover that in about 1 minute when I get to item number 5. All right. Then number 4, the non-remote tasks. Very similar to what we talked about earlier. Create a list, and you're going to have to do this on an ongoing basis. On many of the scenarios, what was normally done by the remote offices, we realized, you know what, they're spending way too much time doing it, have somebody at the home office, and for 6 months, that became the issue. Then later we realized, you know what, let's put something back out to them. So it's an ongoing conversation, but you have a list, and it's easier to make decisions instead of having to start from scratch all the time. Assign owners to them, because remember, if you assign the cleaning of the bathroom to everybody, no one's going to do it. But if you assign slots of time for people to clean the bathroom, then, and you assign owners to it, then you can hold people accountable. And human nature basically says most of the time, you just have to check a few times and everybody steps up to it. Why? Because they know you're checking. So assign owners. Don't just say y'all. Okay. And then connect people. So here's what I mean by that is if I'm at home and I'm depending on some type of work of these non-remote tasks to be done by somebody at the home office or somewhere else, then connect me to that person. Let me know. See, that's why that list is really important on item number one. If I know their phone number, their email, their cell phone number, then that's all you need to do to connect me. I know who to contact and I know who's been assigned those. But if I assign this to, let's say, the scanning team, and I have no way to know where the scanning team, only to find out that half their scanning team is also working from home, and I can't find the person because, I got to get in contact with Tim. Yeah, but who's Tim? Who's Tom? Who's Mary? Who's Lori? Wait a minute, no one answers me, and it becomes a nightmare because you didn't connect people to each other. So make sure that you introduce folks, you send out emails. Hey, y'all, this is who's handling. Lori, talk to Bob. Bob, talk to Tim. You guys go for it. You got your list. Stay in touch with each other. Let me know if I can support you all. All right, number 5, progress reports. All right, so here I want you to notice 3 and 5 are connected. All right, so the progress reports is where this whole thing works or where this whole thing falls apart. Okay. And I will tell you this, in the last week and a half, I've said in about 4 or 5 webinars similar to this. And yesterday I was sent a very awesome 15-page slide deck for a PowerPoint of another company that's doing it. Man, I wish I could do PowerPoints like they did. And I'm looking forward to their webinar. It's going to be next week. But I want to encourage you in something, okay? Something I'm noticing is that when we talk about setting up remote teams, this item number 5 is oftentimes the most overlooked. It's assumed, okay? And 5 and 3 go together because if 3, you're going to set up goals, then you have to have some way to create a report that I can hold you accountable, I can see your progress, and I don't have to ask a lot of questions. So just heads up, whenever you go into a webinar or you go to other talks that are similar to this, if they don't cover the areas of reports or goals, don't think that, oh, they didn't talk about it, so it's not important. No, it's important. They just didn't talk about it, okay? But now you have to, because it's at the core of making this work. Everything falls apart if 3 and 5 are not set together. So what does a progress report look like? Let me give you an example, okay? Here's a simple document, okay? Landscape, okay? Company name at the top. The goals are at the top. Their progress report is in the middle. And then at the bottom is what issues do they have that I need to go fix. So at the top, this is an example of a recent company that called me and said, Maurice, I now have a bunch of people working out there in this particular case with salespeople. Okay, I need to know how to put their metrics and their goals in a simple one-page document. And for me, y'all, this is the cat's meow. Okay, if you don't do this, it becomes your Achilles heel. One-page simple report that you know at the very top what my goals are on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. However, you don't manage to the daily. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You manage to the weekly, the monthly, the quarterly, and the annual. Okay, and then on a weekly basis, they pretty much go and enter their numbers in their report. That report can be Salesforce software, or it can be, if you're a law firm, it can be Needles. If you are working for a food bank, then you go and put it in there. If you work for an engineering firm, you put it in the respective software. If you don't have a centralized software, then you use spreadsheets. I don't wait. If the company doesn't have software, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to wait for the company to make a decision. I will create with each person a one-page sheet of paper, and I will say, are these your goals? Yes. Do you agree with these? Good. I check with my supervisor, or I go the other way. I go to my supervisor, the owners of the company. I say, what is everyone's goals? We set it together. Either way, there's got to be buy-in and agreement. And then the remote person is the one that fills this out, and they fill out the numbers for each one, and they color-coded themselves. Green, where I've hit my numbers, or went above my numbers. Yellow, when I'm almost there, but I had a little, I backs a little bit. Or red, when I'm just not making a lot of progress. And if you track this on a weekly basis and you're regularly emailing each other after your weekly calls, then you're creating documentation in case somebody basically just falls through the cracks and they don't want to perform anymore, and you've provided them the training, you're at least providing documentation. This is legal and very ethical and human support, okay? But it's simple. It's one page. And at the bottom, see the top two, the two items at the top, the standards and goals and the weekly performance week by week, that's how I hold them accountable, okay? How I support them. The one at the bottom where it says obstacles and challenges, that's where they tell me what I need to do to support them and to train them. And they hold me accountable if I don't meet my deadline. So I should have made those one of yellow or red just to make the point. This is how we hold each other accountable. And then when I go to my leadership meetings and I meet with my supervisor, I'm not coming in with commentary. I'm not coming in with opinion. I'm not coming in with really anything except the reports. As a matter of fact, if they're online and in a shared folder, you just send links and everyone knows where to go links. So whenever I meet with my supervisor and he or she are sitting down, all right, how's your team doing? We're not moving into commentary. We're just looking at the reports, looking at the issues. And what's beautiful about this, my experience is that when my supervisors look at the numbers and they see the green and they see that there's more green and yellow than yellow and red, what they're more willing to want to do is go fix those issues at the bottom. If they see a bunch of red and they don't see effort, it doesn't make anybody want to go fix problems at the bottom. So it's a negotiated agreement. You do your part of progressing and meeting your numbers on a regular basis from a distance. I don't have to be there. You know how to do your work, but I'm supporting you, okay? You need to tell us what we need to do in order to support you, and this document becomes extremely, extremely powerful. So don't overlook this, okay? I'm going to go a little quicker for the sake of time, okay? Number 6 is the regular communication. I encourage you for it to be routine, regular, like I said. Definitely random to support it, because you don't want to just have one meeting a week, twice a meeting, and then they feel like, you know what, you're not talking to me on a regular basis. Also, keep in mind different styles, different personality styles. Some people really, really work well. Just call me once a week, okay? Twice a week, fine, but don't call me every day, okay? Some folks, they they're more of the high I, high S personality, where they're more social, needy. They're more they're more social. I'm more social. Okay, if you just talk to me once a week or twice a week, it ain't gonna be enough for me. I like to talk to people once every 2 days. I like to hear from folks on a regular basis. So when my managers and my supervisors reach out to me on a regular basis, that encourages me. So you have to do it by people's styles and their personalities. Just be careful not to go to either extreme, where you're micromanaging or macromanaging, where you're calling them all the time when you shouldn't, or you're disappearing. So you got to look at the personalities. If the personalities are more DC, dominant, conscientious, then the regular routine, less random, is almost perfect. Once a week, twice a week, don't overdo it. Stay out of their way, let them perform, okay? Those that are more high I, high S, you need to interact with them more, and just be more of a friend to them, touch bases with them, interact with them, but just don't suffocate. Let them breathe, because if they come back to you and tell you, look, I feel like I'm on calls with you guys all the time, then we're getting in the way of them producing. All right, the leadership meetings, make sure that you're working off of the progress reports. Make sure you're focusing on addressing the problems. Make sure you're giving them the client satisfaction or the client feedback that you're getting at the home office. Okay, in the home office, you have a lot of information they need to know. So they need to know, look, customers are saying this, clients are saying this, customers are saying this about you, customers are saying this about us, both good and bad. They need that information. And then give them that feedback. And also, this feedback is where you have to keep a track of what those issues are and identify and say, okay, who needs training where? Okay, who needs training, who needs coaching, and who needs support, so that I can make sure these problems go away, or just have the hard reality that half the problems is just me, Maurice, walking across or calling the IT department, the claims department, the adjusters, and basically advocate for my team the things that need to be fixed. whether it's screens, whether it's reports, whether it's turnaround, whatever it is. My people out in the field are counting on me. When they tell me their problems, that I'm going to go up to my leadership team rhythm, but I'm also going to go to the other departments and advocate and find solutions for them. Otherwise, this falls apart if they don't feel that you're supporting them that way. All right, then the team-wide calls we talked about earlier, have very regular calls, also random. One owner very recently, was last week, okay, they're going to remote. What they decided to do is they decided to order pizza for everybody on any given day to arrive at their house, and they scheduled it with the pizza folks for them to go out at a certain time. They were notified of it, and the owner started calling everybody about 30 minutes afterwards. Says, "So how was the pizza? Did you like it? Hey man, we're here for you." Very random, very random. We didn't announce it. It was really great idea. So it's kind of like, it's the equivalent of walking around the building when everybody was together with an ice cream cart, dishing out ice cream and candy for everybody. Well, you can't do that when you're remote. So come up with stuff. Get creative in your time-wide calls. Make sure that you're positive, okay? The vast majority of all calls that you do with your people are by default positive, okay? And only about 10-20% of your conversations should be corrective in nature, okay? Do not depend and don't hide behind emails and don't hide behind text when you need to do coaching and correction. Pick up the phone, pick up the video, and talk to each other. Don't hide because of the distance, all right? But by and large, your team-wide call, especially when it's with the executives and the whole company, the whole firm, those meetings should be 99% positive. That's not the time to talk about the negative stuff. The negative stuff is when you have those executive manager meetings with different departments, or you go down into the huddles, okay? But the all-team meeting has got to be positive and forward-thinking, okay? All right, and then number 9 and number 10, this is the culture aspect, how to provide training. Get creative. I mean, get creative. The technology that's available for us right now is incredible. I was going to do a training session on how to use Zoom, and I mentioned it to somebody, and they said, "Don't do that." They texted me a link to a guy who did a 20-minute fantastic Zoom tutorial. I didn't want to sit there and watch 2.5 hours of Zoom tutorials from the Zoom website. So somebody saved me a bunch of time, sent me this 20-minute virtual webinar that somebody recorded. I watched it this morning. Man, it was great. Thankfully, I already knew most of them, but I picked up a lot of tips and tricks. Get creative, okay? Share with each other. There's so much stuff on YouTube. There's so much stuff that's out there that there's no reason why you can't provide each other with training sessions, training videos. The shorter the better. It's actually, people or human beings tend to want to watch 5 minutes every day rather than 40 minutes at a sitting. So what we're planning to do with this video is we're going to chop it up into 7-minute blocks, put them on YouTube as a playlist, and send it to folks so they know, oh, this video is only 6 minutes. Oh, that one's only 7 minutes. And they're fall in line as a playlist. So record your virtual sessions like this, record presentations, have access to a videographer. I cannot tell you how important, especially in remote world, videographers, having a local videographer, you know what, either having an in-house videographer or having a very good remote videographer. I have a remote videographer. He lives in New Jersey. He used to live in town. He lives in New Jersey. He's thinking of moving down to Los Angeles. The coronavirus has kind of put everybody's plans in a little bit on hold. I don't care where he sits. I get him all my information. He returns to it, and it feels like he's sitting right here. And they are involved in all of our meetings. Why? Because they pretty much need to know who needs training in what areas and what training can they find to make sure that everyone gets supported. And also, don't underestimate. Most companies underestimate and they underutilize their online portal on YouTube, okay? Your YouTube channel is incredibly important. If you want some help on how to set that up and why, give me a call. All right, and then building the culture around it. Get creative, tie it to performance, make it public, reward it openly. Let them come up with contests and invest in it. Invest in it. One of the most difficult things was the third bullet: make it public. Okay, what I mean by that is this: is they all knew, the producers of the first scenario that I had, on the second scenario that I had, as well as all the programming teams in the first scenario, we could all go to a link on our intranet, or back then to a file on the shared network folders, where every week everybody's performance was rated from top to bottom. Those that were in the green, those that were in the yellow, and those that were in the red. Okay, and pretty much that made it so easy for me to call people and say, okay, hey man, Harry, how are you? Yeah, have you looked at the weekly stats? Yeah, man. So what zone are you in? Man, I'm in red. Well, you know the rules. How long have you been in red? Only 1 week. What happens after 4 weeks of being in red? Yeah, dude, what do I need to get out of red? That's my question. What do you need to do to get out of red? Because the rules basically, if you stay in red for 3 to 4 weeks, you get written up. Okay, and if you can't get out of red after 2 weeks, after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you're going to be given your final warning. All right, so everybody knew that there was a game, there was a contest. And the longer that you stayed in green, the more your points would increase to buy stuff from that internal store, and the more bonuses you get. So yeah, it took about 2 months to figure out contests like that, but it's worth it. And if you keep it private, because it's like, gosh, they don't want other people to know what their performance is. Yeah, but don't worry about that. People will know when people are getting fired anyway. So why don't we do a more public, everybody be transparent, and avoid any of that when people know what you are wrestling with? Because when you make it public like that, people tend to dive in and help each other get out of red. So the team members, they want to rescue each other. But when it's just me and my supervisor, and me and the person, then pretty much it doesn't create that teamwork. So anyway, build fun around it. Contests and owners, executives, invest in this. Your people can be more productive remotely than they can in-house. And that's what a lot of my clients are finding out. It is weird, y'all. People are out there remotely. You figure, man, they're not going to do their work. No, it's not the case. If you look at the records, if you look at the stats, people that are set up correctly in doing this, the teams tend to be productive, and they don't have to work a full 8 hours a day. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of glad that you don't work 8 hours. I want the results. I want the progress. And if you're able to do it in 5, 6 hours, more power to you. Okay. And when people realize that's okay, and no one's clocking me, okay, now you gotta, there's a difference between those that are hourly as well as salary. So I don't want to stir the pot up here with HR reps. Call me and we'll figure that out. But the overall attitude needs to be is that you reward performance, you reward success. You don't reward clock counting. Okay, guys. The question, the best question, I guess the most complimentary question I was asked, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes. But with technology, I'm going to say, man, I sure hope so. So I right now have 3 different recording devices, making sure that this is being recorded. So yes, this is going to be recorded. It will be uploaded to my Facebook page. It's going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel. It will then be made available in different places. So yes, all right. Then the second question asks is, where can I download the form? Download the form from our website at teamrealworld.com/remote teams, or email us and we'll get it to you. Either way, don't do without the form, okay? Another question that I was asked is, can I send you a Word version of the form so you can tailor it? Absolutely. The only thing I ask is that if you're going to tailor it and make it all yours, at the bottom, you give me credit and say, this was provided by Maurice Velasquez, the Team Real World, copyright 2020, okay? Give me that. And then other than that, use it at your pleasure, and please tell me the stories of how this is working for you. Also, give me feedback on where we need to make adjustments. As of 2 weeks ago, for years, I have had a list that said 9 steps. And it wasn't until last week where I showed it to a client and I kept emphasizing the training aspect They said, Maurice, don't assume the training. You got to take the training out of Make It Fun and have a separate point. You need a separate point for training. I'm like, okay, so it's 10 points, okay? So I'm coachable, okay? I don't want to make it 13 points, 20 points, okay? But what I'm saying is that if you think of the things, you're seeing things that could help me and help others improve based on trying this, please tell me your war stories. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope this has been helpful. When we provide it out on YouTube and everything, we'll send out emails to everybody. And yes, another question is can we have a copy of the PowerPoint? The answer is yes. Anything we can do for you, if you think of other titles or of other issues or topics that you're struggling with, especially right now in the coronavirus, please do not hesitate. I'll put together slide decks or presentations like this, whatever I can do to support you, especially during this very difficult time. Do not hesitate. Our motto right now is help, help, help. So we're here for you. Thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great weekend.
Hi, this is Maurice. Thank you for listening to Winning in the Workplace, the Maurice Velasquez Show. Follow me on Facebook or Twitter at Maurice Velasquez and subscribe to my YouTube page at Team Real World. Visit my two websites at teamrealworld.com or mauricevelasquez.net. Call me at 225-505-2823. And don't forget, speak in one voice agreements, build your rhythm meetings, and stick to the same page. With that, you'll create high-performance teams and everyone will win in the workplace. Have a great day.